You're listening
to the CD Baby DIY
Musician
Podcast.
Well, hey there, and welcome to episode 46 of the CD Baby DIY Musician Podcast. My name is Kevin, and joining me are Chris and Robert. Hey guys.
Hello.
This is a Roundtable edition, so we'll be discussing things around the Roundtable here at CD Baby, reflecting on the last episode where we discussed podcasting and internet marketing.
We should also put the disclaimer up front, too, that we just had free lunch day at CD Baby. And
that's right. Those of you that follow me on Twitter know that it was free burrito day, and all of us ate way too much, and the office is a little warm, and it feels a little more like nap time right now than podcast time. So if we just kind of drift off and you hear a little bit of silence, we're just having a little burrito nap. So
we can edit in some new age music
that's right.
for that segment.
That's right. Well, today we've got a little music news, then we'll recap the last episode, and then we'll round it out with your feedback, your listener calls, and all that goodness. So let's jump into some news.
CD Baby.
CD Baby Music News.
All right, well, starting out, there's a new performance royalty rate on the horizon. As expected, lawmakers are now introducing a bill related to performance royalties for U.S.-based traditional radio stations. The Performance Rights Act, a measure that died in a previous Congress, is now being introduced by various members. On January 21st, congressional staffers leaked a memo to Digital Music News that detailed aspects of this bill. Most importantly, a provision that would charge broadcasters for the use of non-interactive recordings. This would make radio stations pay licensing fees for the usage of the recordings, where at the moment they only pay fees for the usage of the songs. Facebook is back in the news. In a previous episode, we highlighted how Facebook had overtaken MySpace. Well, it's official. Facebook now has doubled the amount of users found on MySpace. But I found some interesting facts. Andrew Lipsman, director of industry analysis at Comscore, said, while Facebook holds a sizable lead worldwide, MySpace is still the champ in the US. Lipsman noted that Facebook has about 55 million American users every month, while MySpace has 75 million a month. And 2/3 of MySpace users are based in the US, while only a quarter of Facebook users are here in the States. Lipsman said Facebook has done a great job of luring worldwide users, especially with its foreign language interfaces. In the markets with the new interfaces, he noted that Facebook quickly went from a small player to a leader in social networking. He also notes it's gained traction because it's become more culturally relevant. You may have seen him in the Super Bowl. Bruce Springsteen's Working on a Dream topped the weekly album charts with 224,000 first-week sales. But this week, concert fans were at the center of a controversy sparked by a Ticketmaster campaign pointing buyers to higher-priced seats at their own resale broker, Tickets Now, even while regular seats were still available. And lastly, the Grammys are on this week. By the time you hear this, the 51st Grammy Awards will have taken place, and it's interesting to note that at last count, 17 albums that were available through CD Baby were nominated for Grammys. Leading the pack was Best Traditional Folk with 3 nominations, and it ranges from folk to polka to Best Tejano Music. The complete list is posted at cdbaby.org if you're interested to see all the categories and artists. Check it out. And that's some of the news headlines I found interesting since we last convened.
Go CD Baby artists.
That's
it's
right.
pretty cool to hear some of the home team up there.
Yeah, and there was things like Best Folk,
And
Best Polka.
Children, family music.
Yeah, children got some couple nominations. So, yeah, it was good representation of indie artists in there. The Bruce Springsteen one, the reason I found that story interesting is because there's a lot of talk how in the new digital age that live performance is going to be the way that artists make their living. And it's going to be a big battle with people like Ticketmaster, who have kind of got this ticket monopoly and made it very hard to get tickets these days without paying huge fees or jumping through a whole bunch of loopholes. Like I've been online trying to buy tickets when they're supposed to be going on sale in Portland, and it's instantly telling me they're sold out, and I find out that, they're available elsewhere, or they sold most of it to another company. And
Well, right, because they have these sort of weird, like this sort of digital outsourcing that's almost like
Scalping?
it's almost like scalping, where you have all these companies that are like reselling your tickets, and everybody reserves like a certain amount of tickets, and it just becomes this weird sort of thing where nobody's bought anything, but everyone's
But the price keeps going up.
The price keeps on going up, yeah.
if the shift is to more of a live presence for artists, because some indie artists play at venues where Ticketmaster runs the deal, I don't know if they have contracts with the venues or how exactly it works, but it can affect, your fans' experience with going to your show as well.
As far as the venues go, Ticketmaster puts itself in a position where if it's, has deals with these acts and, a lot of the musicians that are coming through town and stuff, you could be out of luck if you're a venue who doesn't work with Ticketmaster.
Yeah.
And then they're totally like the mafia.
Yeah, yeah. The royalty rate thing, I think, is going to be interesting to watch. There's a whole lot of copyright issues that are going to be in the news big time this coming year, and it's kind of going to hit ahead, and I think we're going to see a lot of fighting, a lot of arguing, and traditional radio stations like, that you listen to in your car driving down the road, they pay a blanket license in order to play that music, and it only benefits the people that wrote the songs. It doesn't benefit anybody's, version of a song. So if you're doing a cover and your version of that cover of a Bob Dylan song becomes huge, then you still don't get any money for all the performances it's generated. So this would allow a performance royalty for the artists and the people who own the recording. And in other countries, they do this, but in America, they've been fighting it for a long time, and Sound Exchange does it on the web, and that was kind of a first step here in America. So
are they proposing to pay it to some group that is going to act as a label representative, basically?
It would be somebody, probably, if not Sound Exchange, somebody set up like Sound Exchange that would collect it. It'd be, ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC collect the royalties for songwriters, but this would be someone collecting.
Now, does this mean that the guy played tambourine on track 4 for 3 bars, is that owed a certain amount of royalty when that song gets played?
Depends on how
radio?
they break it up. Sound Exchange actually breaks it up into those kind of smaller increments, like the players, the featured artists. So who knows how that would break down. But my thing, and why I thought it was worth mentioning, is that if it does pass, I could see some smaller music stations just closing up shop, because I think they're having a little bit harder time. Their influence has definitely dwindled over the years, and I think it's just going to get worse. And then if you add this huge blanket license that they have to pay on top of that. Well, let's get into a little bit recapping last episode when I interviewed Jason Van Orden, and we talked about podcasting and internet marketing and all that good stuff. So by now I'm hoping that everyone has a good idea of what a podcast is and how it works. And Robert, you had a comment there from somebody who was on our website who wanted to make sure everyone knew exactly what a podcast really was.
Right. A gentleman named Doug Taylor made a comment just talking about that, wanting to make sure that everyone knew that podcasting did not just involve audio, not just like the podcast you're listening to now, but also video. And there's actually ways to deliver things such as PDFs. As Jason Van Orden also commented, podcast is portable delivery of content. It's not necessarily just audio. You should check out the comments if you're interested. It's sort of an ongoing discussion in the podcast world. What is podcasting? What is video casting or vidcasting? And people have a lot of different opinions about it. I mean, I would agree with Jason in that it's a sort of portable content delivery. I think that it is a little bit more compatible with audio as it stands now. I think that there's, the way that video is being delivered through websites like YouTube is more popular than through the sort of channels of like serialized content feeds like podcasting. And I think they've sort of audio delivery and video delivery are somewhat separate in the ways they're best approached as far as being delivered online.
Yeah, the tough thing with doing a video podcast that you run into is that the huge download size, because you're not actually streaming the video, you're downloading the video, and the bandwidth issues. So you have like storage issues, bandwidth issues, and then the ability of people being able to download it in a timely manner. And so that's why all the video podcasts are really short. And that's why I generally don't download video podcasts, because I'm usually either in my car or here at work or at the gym when I'm listening to a podcast. And so I want something, I like them to be at least a half hour long. That's...
I mean, people can disagree with me, but I think that as video streaming becomes more common on portable devices, that's how people are going to watch video. It may be how people listen to audio too, but like video, I think it's just because of the file size.
Yeah, and audio is something that you can listen to passively while you're doing other things, where video, you kind of have to pay attention to what's going on the screen anyway. There are several points that Jason mentioned that I thought were worth touching on. The first one being that to see yourself as a content creator. And I thought that was a big thing to really highlight with artists, especially artists who may get frustrated with trying to deal with social networking sites and dealing with all the different places where you're trying to have a presence on the web. But if you see yourself as a content creator and everything you're generating is content, and how you can use what you're already generating and repurpose it for other things, I think that was a big point that he made, and it's kind of made me tweak some things that I've been doing and see things a little differently.
I think Jason was sort of talking about this is like, you don't want to just contact your fan base once a year when your new album comes out. You want to be able to keep them on the ride, keep them hearing about you and listening to things you're working on and seeing you at live shows. Even if they don't make it out to the venue, you can bring a camera and share that with them, and you can describe the experience in a blog or a Twitter post, and you can give them a free MP3 of a recording or of something you're working on, and put photos up on your website of the things you're doing, and all that is going to keep people interested in following and wondering what's going to come up next.
It's an interesting balance, though, for me. I know, especially with something like an email list, because I know I've subscribed to bands' email lists, and then I end up getting something every week or every 4 days, and I'm just like, okay, stop already! You're just cluttering my inbox. So I think I always err on the side of too little, out of reservation that I might be offending someone with too much information. Which maybe is holding me back in some way. But
Jason kind of talked about it, and this was the other point I was going to highlight, was building a relationship and building trust, and then asking for things. And I think artists get people on an email list and they just say, come to my show, or new album, but they don't ever have a dialogue. And I think, you obviously don't want to, with email especially, be filling up people's inboxes. But I think that's why there's some... And
don't be a preacher. Like, I think that's what's so annoying about getting newsletters all the time. It's like you have like 6 different events that this band is doing and participating in, and it's all like, look, all this cool stuff we're doing. It doesn't say anything to the person who received the email. If you send out a newsletter that's like, hey guys, I was wondering if I could get your opinion on this, or like, how are you doing? Like sort of inviting a sort of interaction, you're going to probably get more positive results.
And I think that's where the whole social network aspect of what a musician should be doing is, everyone just had their static, their websites, weren't really, MySpace wasn't really in the picture yet, and they were building email lists. I think it was just those email blasts that were impersonal, that were just advertisements, and it was just like, I don't care anymore. And I think with the social networking sites, you have to shift your thinking to be like, I'm interacting with these people. And so what can I do to make the interaction something that, is beneficial to them? And, Jason even mentioned it, in the interview, that there's some fans that surprisingly will want to know everything, and constantly be updated. And there's other people that don't. So having options where people can communicate the way they want to communicate is a good way to think about it.
And your ideal fan is the fan who loves your music so much they're going to make their own YouTube video for you. Like the Jonathan Colton fans who are out there taking his songs and making animation videos out of them. And he knows how to encourage it and keep it going. But once you have that sort of momentum, it's just so positive. And then the content's being created for you. You're not having to write the newsletters and make the videos and stuff because your fans are doing it for you. I mean, that's an ideal situation.
Right.
Free content, yes. Yeah. Well, I jotted down a couple notes here about what I thought makes a great podcast. Because I know that several of the artists or several listeners have emailed, what should I do with the podcast or whatever, or some people have sent me links on to check out their podcast, and so I had a couple quick notes of what I think makes up a good podcast that I want to listen to, and for starters, I think it has to have a point. I've listened to a lot of podcasts, not just by artists, but just in general, where it seems like the premise of the podcast, the topic or the theme is going to be really cool, and then they just don't really have a point when they get on there. Another one I had was that it stays on target. There was this one podcast that was about a TV show that I used to listen to all the time, and I finally had to unsubscribe because I couldn't take it anymore. They would just tell all these inside jokes. They would do all this stuff.
Is this a lost podcast?
Yes,
this was your favorite podcast. How could you abandon them?
No. This was a while ago. Because I think a lot of people complained, and they got their act together. And now
so
it's
then
good.
you resubscribed?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can do that.
Fair weather friend.
No, they were starting out, and it was awful. Because it would like start out interesting, and then it would just be like inside jokes, them rambling about stuff, and but they had good personalities, but it got hard to listen because it was like, what am I even listening to anymore? So to me, that's a biggie that that it has a point and stays on target. And we've been accused of that a couple times here. But we try. And the last thing I had was that it has longevity, and that people will look forward to your content. So it's something you gotta envision how you can keep it going. To be a podcast, it needs to be a serial thing where it comes out every week or every other week or even once a month. But people will, if you are producing something that's interesting, they'll start looking forward to it. And, you need to deliver on a consistent basis.
Clearly thinking out the execution is important too, because I know I learned on the video podcast side of things. You remember a year ago I was promising a tour video podcast. Well,
I'm still waiting. I check iTunes every day.
I know you do. No, but here's what happened is I shot most of it because the other people in my band had no interest in carrying a camera around. So by the time I got the footage home and looked at it, I'm hardly in, I'm not in a lot of it. And yet it's supposed to be about me. So that was just a huge mistake. I got a lot of interesting stuff about the other members of the band, but it's my name at the front of the band. So I figured, well, people won't really be interested in this now. So.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not about you, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, it could be a podcast about the backing band.
The name is Chris Robley and the Fear of Heights.
Right.
It's just purely a Fear of Heights podcast.
That's right.
Maybe that would be its own little angle.
Yeah.
No, and this stuff is tough, and which is one of the reasons why I was thinking, the people that listen to this podcast can know that we're not just sitting here telling them what to do. We're trying this stuff as well. And I can say that there's a lot of people out there that sit back and kind of dispense information, but don't really try it themselves. And it's hard to pull this stuff off, and it's not easy, and I will admit all of that. And the new project that I'm working on called Hello Morning, Peter, who is in the Music Discovery podcast with me, he's in that band as well. We're planning a podcast, and we thought it'd be up and released by now, but it's going really slow for various reasons. But also, we sat down and really planned out like some segments that it would have, because we were trying to address all these issues. How is it going to go? How are we going to have longevity and keep it going and interesting without it just being, we're at rehearsal, we're at the gig, we're in the studio. And so we kind of laid out these specific segments that we thought we'd have every time that would only be like 2 or 3 minutes. Because we were thinking, band podcast, it doesn't need to be more than 15 minutes, It's not, after that, you're just going to start.
What about like an
people.
inter-band relationship or something like that? Like some strife between different people? Could you...
Well,
the juicy stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
The other guys in the band are all much bigger than me. So, well, one of the things I'm trying to remember what all the segments were, but I can't at the moment. But the main one that I thought was interesting, that to me made me go, okay, we can do this and have longevity, is that we were going to have a segment that was just someone in the band giving a top 5 list, and it didn't even have to be related to music.
Right.
And it was just something where people could, maybe get some personality from whoever the band member is that delivers that top 5 list. Yeah. And it could be something that, people who might just look forward to that just outside of hearing the band itself. So that was one idea. We thought making a segment of that. And then, we thought we'll have a segment of, maybe where someone talks about a song. And just so we were planning it out, and we're still in the process of getting it going. It'll happen, but it's just, it's tough. Trying to make something that's interesting and pile it on top of everything else you're doing is tough. But if you can get that content out there and populate it through all those sites, I think it is a good way to draw fans, especially, all of us have kids and jobs and families, and we're not going to be touring nonstop like bands I've been in the past. So it's trying to connect with people in a way that can create a following without being on the road all the time.
I'm pretty positive I don't have any kids, just for the record.
I do according to All Music Guide.
Really?
But I actually don't.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
My mom saw that on iTunes or something. She's like, Chris, are you not telling me something?
You haven't told us. That's a good built-in little mystery.
Yeah.
You are the Stephen King of indie rock.
Yeah.
According to your bio.
I can't think of his name. What's the basketball player who has children everywhere?
Oh, I don't know. I know who you're talking about, but
could also be the BB King of indie pop.
Robert, didn't you have a couple suggestions for what you thought made a good podcast?
Oh, yeah. Basically, pretty basic for me. I think that, we talk about story a lot, and I think that stories and anecdotes that are important, and, just like Tom was talking about, sort of planning out your stage moves. Like, I think that for a podcast, you can sort of plan out the stories that you're going to tell and plan out you can improvise. You don't have to tell them the same way. You don't have to read it right off of paper. But to have, like we do, we have, Kevin drafts up sort of an itinerary for what we're going to talk about, and Chris and I bring certain things that we want to talk about to the podcast, and we sort of put that in a loose form and sort of riff on it from there. But it's important, I think, to have a good story or two to keep your guests listening. And I think it's also important, if you are an informative podcast, to make sure that you are offering relevant information that is, something that maybe people can't get anywhere else.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier that some of our listeners have sent me links to their podcast to check out. I thought it'd be a cool idea if in the comments section for this episode, if you're an artist and you're doing a podcast, that you leave a comment there with the name of your podcast and a link to where people can check it out, because I'd like to check them all out and see what artists are doing. I know I listened to a podcast by an artist named Arthur Pope, who actually, we have a call from him in our listener feedback section, but I was checking out his podcast this week, and he just does a new song every podcast, and he has a kind of he seems like he'd be a funny guy. I'd like hanging out with him. But what the comment he made in the opening of his podcast, I just burst out laughing because it just struck me as funny. And I thought his podcast is really short. It's just a song, but he had enough of his personality in there that I thought it made it interesting.
Oh, that's success if you can get one of your listeners to burst out laughing.
I think people here thought I was insane because I had headphones in and just started laughing really loudly. But anyway, it'd be cool if everyone who's listening, because I know a lot more of you are probably doing podcasts than we know about. It'd be cool if you went to the comment section for this episode of the podcast at cdbabypodcast.com. Put in your name and all the info about your band and whatnot, and a link to your podcast, and it'd be cool to check it out, and everyone can see what other artists are doing. So,
Steph.
Well, let's get into our listener feedback section, and of course, we're going to start out with one of my favorite segments, your phone calls. So let's get to those phone calls.
CD Baby Podcast.
Message line
206-426-5683.
The number you have dialed.
206-426-5683.
Hello, this is Arthur Pope from St. Louis, Missouri. I was wondering if you guys have ever considered starting the CD Baby DIY Musician web forum. I think that having online message boards would be a great way for you guys to communicate and gather feedback from your audience, as well as to provide a venue for DIY musicians listening to get to know each other and network and collaborate and just share their ideas for how to be successful in the DIY musician area. So I think you should do that. It'd be awesome, and we'd all love you even more for it. You can get my album by going to my website, arthurpope.com. That's ARTHURPOPE.com. And listen to my Song Factory podcast there. My album's called From Thorns to Roses, and it's good. Thank you.
Hi, this is Trey McGriff with the band Hills Rolling, and I was calling to congratulate Kevin and everybody with the CD Baby podcast. I recently tuned in and really enjoyed hearing your service, and got a lot of pointers too. So just wanted to mention I recently had the pleasure of sharing the stage with Roger Allen Wade, who is known for doing a lot of the music on the MTV's Jackass series and the films, and just wanted to let you guys know, if you dig that stuff, please come and check out some of my music. It's at hillsrolling.com, and I have 2 CDs featured at CD Baby, and I really appreciate all the support that CD Baby has given the independent musician. Keep up the great work, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.
Hey guys, this is Evan from Monsters Are Not Myths, and I was just calling in response to your chat about Twitter, and I just wanted to say one of the things that I've found incredibly valuable about Twitter is that it can kind of be your own informal poll. You want to know what to call the new album, and you say, hey, we're thinking about Vague Smiles or Portable Luminaire, which do you guys like better? Or, hey, would you guys come see us open for Marcy Playground? Or, hey, what type of T-shirt should we get for you guys? So it's just nice to bounce ideas off kind of a broader group of your fans. Anyway, love the podcast. Thanks.
That was our first set of calls, and I just wanted the call from Evan about Twitter. I think that's a really good example about how you can actually use Twitter in an effective way, and it be different than like just using it like your Facebook status, where you're interacting with people, you're asking them questions. And I think that's a good way to look at something like that, where you're not just saying, look at me, look at me, look at me. You're saying, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I particularly like the part about including them in the creative process somehow. So when that album finally comes out, they'll say, well, I had some small part in naming that album.
Definitely.
Or choosing what the track list would be or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think that's cool. Now, Arthur mentioned us having a forum. We actually did have a forum on the website for a little while. It didn't have all that much success.
Yeah, and it was buried, and when I heard Arthur's message, I was like, he's right. And this is one of those times where we sound like we're begging, but we're saying your feedback matters, because how much time we can spend putting towards these, various efforts is dictated to us. And so if we know that there's a big need for it or a big desire for it, we could possibly facilitate it, but we need to hear from you. So if that's something that would really interest you listening out there, let us know, because I think it'd be cool if artists were swapping stories, being able to connect with each other, and not just hear from us, but also hear from each other.
I mean, we do have we do have the comments field on the podcast site. We do have, our email and our call-ins, and we also have, MySpace and a Facebook page. And Twitter. So there are lots of ways to communicate with us out there, and ways to sort of, share those ideas around. But maybe, I don't know, maybe on top of that, a forum would benefit us as well. So
if that's something that would interest you, let us know. And Trey from Hills Rolling, we appreciate your kind words. And we have a couple more phone calls.
Hello, wonderful world of CD Baby. This is Tyree Sterling from the Ministry of Rock Your Mic. You can be found at rockyourmic.com. I've been with you for 43 episodes strong, and I want to thank you for what you do for us independent artists. I do believe that we are the future. Episode 43 was really good for me. I'm a wholly hip-hop artist, so it's normally just me. My wife sings on some of the vocal tracks, but it's really good to understand stage presence. And I am guilty of having 30, 45 minutes and seeing how many songs I can squeeze within there, as opposed to creating moments. So it's really got my mind thinking on merchandise to have, while on stage to talk about the different moments of the songs, possibly categorizing 2 or 3 songs into a moment and then transition into another moment. Another question I have is with the Twitter thing. How do you get people into the land of Twitter if a lot of them are on the cell phone and not on the internet as much, but they just operate through cell phone? And also, are there any really good mobile communities where you say text something to a 5-digit number? Is there anything out there that's really inexpensive, possibly free, but quality? Looking for quality mainly. You can find me at cdbaby.com/ShaddaiSons or at rockyourmic.com. Thank you.
Hi, guys. This is Ryan States. I think I've listened to all of your episodes since I discovered the cast about 4 months ago. I'm touring with the circus. I play keyboards, and we perform with a lot of animals, and it usually smells like a rodeo. And during the Elephant Act, when they come out on stage, I keep a can of air freshener on my keyboard because they usually, make a mess during the show, and the audience seems to really enjoy that better than any of the tricks they're doing. But it was weird this one day because, it still smelled really bad after the elephants had already left the stage. And I figured it must be the poop buckets sitting next to the bandstand. But then, even when the show was completely over, the lights are coming up, and the audience is almost totally gone from their seats, I'm still smelling this thing, and it just smells really bad. And I look over, and I see a used baby diaper under the seat, literally 1 foot from my keyboard. It's the closest seat to me out of all of them. And it was taped up. It was sealed, but it was used. And so, I don't know, I guess it's a good sign that the show is so good that people don't want to leave their seats for anything. Anyway, all I can say is don't join the circus, or if you do, bring plenty of air freshener. My name is Ryan States, like United States. For more stories on the circus, you can go to my podcast at ryanstatespodcast.com, or just go to ryanstates.com. Thanks a lot. Bye.
I'm gonna have to check out his podcast.
Wow. Suffering for his art there.
Every time I listen to that message, I just started cracking up with. He sounded like he needed a hug, kind of. But when he said the poop bucket's next to the bandstand, poor guy.
Well, and I think it's funny. That's a perfect example of a sort of anecdote that's entertaining in a podcast.
Yeah, it made me immediately want to go listen to his podcast.
Totally.
And I definitely will check it out next time.
The Holy Hip Hop Artist, I think we've probably asked people to share this information with us before, but I know in my mind I always focus so much on pop and rock music, but I would really love to hear what people who are doing hip-hop or classical or jazz or avant-garde, any of those kind of acts, if they have sort of one thing that they do at shows that really creates a moment, because it would just be fascinating for me to hear. So
definitely.
Yeah. I mean, if you're an artist and you want to share that with us, please, by all means, let us know.
And thanks, Tyrese, for listening to all 44
he's
of our episodes.
a long-time listener. If I had a T-shirt, I'd send it to you. But he asked about Twitter on cell phones, and actually, when I first heard about Twitter, I think it was last year at South by Southwest when I heard someone talking about Twitter. I thought it was just something that was only for cell phones, because I know you can set up your phone to Twitter. I have an iPhone, so it has an app. There's lots of apps you can choose from for the iPhone that will handle Twitter for you. And that's actually what got me into it, because I thought it was more interesting to be able to talk about stuff as I'm, going throughout my day, and something strikes me as funny or interesting. I can just Twitter about it right there.
And there are other. I know there are other social networking programs and communities that are a little more cell phone based, and I think that probably we will visit some of that in the future. I can't think of any right off the top of my head, but
if someone has any advice about the whole texting things, I know what he's talking about, where it says text to this number, and it kind of, if you send a message by that, and it all gathers, somewhere where people can see them. I've not done that before, but if anyone has any advice on that, feel free to let us know. Speaking of letting us know, the listener line, if you'd like to call in and leave a comment or feedback or anything we discussed today, the number is 206-426-5683. Our email is info@cdbabypodcast.com. And the comment sections for the episodes, like we said, they've become pretty fun and entertaining and some interesting threads going on there. Just go to cdbabypodcast.com and click on the comment link next to the episode you'd like to weigh in on. And like I said in the last episode, this is a lot more fun when we interact. And there's a couple topics that are I've been interested in hearing people's feedback on, just on an ongoing basis. And that was, how people as artists are interacting with Facebook. We mentioned at the top of the show, Facebook is now doubling MySpace, but I thought that the interesting facts that it's not quite in the U.S. But I'm curious how artists are interacting with that. We shared a comment from a listener, Nate, a few weeks back, how he had some good advice. But as more and more artists are probably jumping into Facebook, I'm just curious how people.
I'm curious what sort of applications people use too, because there's so many plugins and applications you can use for Facebook. I really don't use all that many myself, but I would be curious to see what people are using out there to sort of enhance their Facebook experience.
Robert, you had an email you wanted to share, didn't you?
I did, yeah. We got an email to the info@cdbabypodcast email from Bert Newmelin, basically just saying that, all the Web 2.0 stuff that we talk about, Twittering and Facebooking and blogging and all that, isn't sort of almost too revealing, that we're sort of ignoring the parts of being an artist that are mysterious, and that, letting fans wonder and not exposing everything all at once. And I think that's a good point, but I think that it's a good point, but it also kind of is a little bit misleading, because creating mystery is also creating content. So like, you can read a Sherlock Holmes book and always feel like you're missing something, but you're getting more and more content. A Sherlock Holmes book could be posted into Twitter, and every single, 4 lines could end with a question mark, and you could be like, God, when's the next Twitter going to come? Because there's still mystery there. And I think that, if you're not putting yourself out there, you might as well not exist. You have to put the mystery out in front of people and make them want more. And I think that's the trick. You don't want to expose all your tricks, but you do want to continually propagate the mystery and the interest in who you are and what you're doing.
I think like bands like Pink Floyd and Radiohead have been great at that in their careers, of constantly, putting out press releases, putting out content, videos, music, all sorts of stuff, compendiums, all this stuff, but you still don't really know who those people are.
Yeah. I think my response to him was, in the email, was that, I can see how different artists might use it differently, or may not use it as much, or may use it more. But I think you hit on something that's important to note, and that it's not just like lifting up the curtain and showing all your secrets. And that's why at first, when I didn't get Twitter, I was like, this is stupid. But then when I kind of caught on to how to really use it, I thought, oh, this is cool, because it helps develop your kind of sense of story.
Right.
How can I talk about what I'm just going through my life today and make it sound interesting? And I think that's more the idea of, it's building interest, it's building some anticipation, it's building those things in that are hard to do when you're maybe not touring, when you're fighting with all this other stuff going on, that's in all this other visual and audio stuff that people get bombarded with every day. Doing something that's beyond that, that's interesting, will keep people's attention.
And whereas the impulse is, because that's how Twitter has sort of set it up, that's sort of the environment they've created, where you send a little note about what you're doing during the day, but you don't necessarily have to tell them what you're doing. You can tell them what you're thinking. You can make up something completely fictional. Basically it's 140 characters, and you can say whatever the heck you want or post a picture. And, there's a million different ways to create interest, just like there is in a novel, just like there is in a movie, just like there is in a podcast. It just happens to be a form, and, it's a newer form, so there's even more opportunities for people to try new things.
I think a better question is, with all this Web 2.0 stuff and everyone becoming a content creator, when is the internet going to become full?
I don't know. Does your computer start overflowing at that point?
I want to be there for the last attempted upload when the web just says sorry.
And all
I can't
the
do this
servers in the
anymore.
world collectively explode.
Yeah.
It could happen. It could happen. You've been listening to the CD Baby DIY Musician Podcast, broadcasting from Portland, Oregon, USA.